So this week in class, we'll tackle the topic of pseudoscience versus real science. And to stay away from some of the more political things, let's go back to 5, 10 years ago to the vegan vegetarianism movement. Because I haven't talked about those students for a long while, and of course, I've got a few of them this semester. I love vegans and vegetarians because they're fun as students, not because they're fun as people. I don't like hanging out with them anywhere else. I've tried to date a few of them, and they basically, what it basically has taught me is that that's a religion to them and a gospel to them. And anytime you bring up anything, even though I'm a scientist, even though it's backed with science, I become a villain essentially. And so there's no point in engaging them in any kind of relationship outside of an intellectual one, because just to point out, and that's just to point out the logic flaws in their thought process. So vegans and vegetarians have this preconceived notion that vegan and vegetarianism equals better. That if I switch and become a vegan or a vegetarian, that I will be healthier, happier, and live long and prosper, I guess, is sort of the argument that they make. And the first time I ever tried to tackle this on an intellectual level was with a student in 2018, fall of 2018, who was the first one to make the argument that if I did this, then I would of necessity live a better life. And so after about midway through the semester, just before Veterans Day, I remember I came in, I said, we'll call her Lorena. I said, Lorena, I've decided to become vegan. And she's like, oh, that's so great. You'll be so happy. I said, yep, I found out that Oreos and Cheetos are vegan. So it's going to be all Oreos and Cheetos all the time. And I'm looking forward to being happy, healthy, and living a long life. Of course, that's not what she means. They have this specific types of foods that they mean. But of course, strictly speaking, those are vegan foods because vegan doesn't mean better. It means lacks certain components. And so they make that argument. So the new buzzword that I noticed since Lorena was a student is plant-based. So all these people are talking about how they're plant-based. And just last week, I was talking with one of the tutoring center directors who noticed that I exercise a lot. And now that the semester's in full swing, I will be here for 14 hours a day. And so they'll see me in the hallway all the time. And he stopped me and asked me how many steps I take, and then was shocked that I am not more physically fit because of how much movement I get, how many miles I walk, et cetera, et cetera. And he asked me why. And I said, well, the real thing is that I've discovered that I'm in love with mangoes. And he said, oh, very sweet, lots of sugar. And I said, yes, but no one has ever gotten in trouble for overeating mangoes, and you can't get pulled over for driving while mangoed. And he, of course, thought this was funny. It's very much a chemistry joke. There's not usually much of a reaction. And so I walked away from this conversation thinking about it that a lot of these plant-based people are actually anti-sugar. And that's basically what they do, is that they've cut out all the refined sugars out of their lives. So they cut out bread and pasta, most desserts and snacks, because those are basically what we used to call empty calories, and now they're not plant-based or vegan, or whatever the new buzzword is. But they're basically empty calories, that they're simple sugars, and your body either burns them because you're active or stores them because you're sessile. And mangoes he was critical of because they're high in sugar, and they are high in sugar, which is why they're delicious, but they're plant-based. And I walked away from that thinking, this is very strange that I'm being criticized by someone who's pro-plants for overeating a particular plant. And then I started thinking further and thought, where do they think sugar comes from? To be quite frank, sugar is from plants. Plants take water and carbon dioxide from the air, and they convert it into sugar. There's a common misconception among students that plants make their own energy from the sun. They make their own food. So plants make sugar, some of which is used for food, and the rest of which is used for secondary metabolism, mostly for building products like cellulose, chitin, etc., that are used to create their superstructure to make plants strong. And since they lack a muscular skeletal system that animals have, so this is their innards and their outwards. So these are actually made out of sugar, and all of the sugar on the planet comes from plants. Well, it comes from photosynthesis. Most of the sugar on the planet that we eat comes from plants, unless of course you're super into seaweed and stuff. But so almost all the food on the planet comes from plants, and almost all the sugar on the planet comes from plants. And then the same people who vilify sugar say plant-based is better, and then vilify me for eating particular plants because of their sugar content. And this is just to point out flaws in their logic. Their logic is plant is better, plant is healthier, plant is virtuous, animal is evil, to get people to stop eating animals, to get people to stop eating meat. And the problem with any of these not well thought through logical paradigms is that there's a counter logic, and that overindulgence in anything can be bad regardless of what it is. What we teach in chemistry and in biology to a degree is balance. In chemistry, it's called Le Chatelier, and equilibrium. In biology, it's called homeostasis. And that's the natural tendency of every system, is to move toward balance. And so the actual best answer is not to be vegan or vegetarian, it's to be balanced. Now, I don't like a lot of government things, but just at the end of the Trump administration, there was this thing that they started putting on the outsides of vending machines on campus. And it said, balance what you eat, drink, and do. And that was good advice. Besides going vegan, vegetarian, or whatever, all life have balance. So I watched The Karate Kid this weekend too. That helps. If you have balance, everything else takes care of itself. Balance is not only good for karate, it's good for the rest of your life. And that was good advice back then. So I actually overindulge in mangoes, and I overindulge in walking. That's to compensate for my overindulgence in mangoes, because I love them. They're delicious, and people up until recently have never been critical of me for overeating fruit. And they're overcritical of me for eating fruit because of the sugar content, not realizing that sugar isn't evil. How much of it and what kind of it and what you do with it, that's how it becomes evil. They have anthropomorphized non-human things and given them human characteristics, tendencies, behaviors, and motives. Sugar does not exist to make your life miserable or to destroy you. It is there because plants need it, and it is used by animals, humans in particular, because we can use it in order to maintain our homeostasis, at least to a certain degree. So I just felt like bringing this up because it's that time in the semester again where students are experts and you're a moron, even though you're wearing a lab coat and standing at the front of the class, because they know just enough about a subject to be dangerous and not enough about it to actually think through the rest of it and consider things outside the scope of the information to which they have thus far been exposed in the class. So sugar is not evil, plants are not evil, animals are not evil. Veganism is not virtuous just because it's veganism. There are underlying undergirding principles that are more virtuous than that, because going entirely to Oreos isn't going to make me healthy. And Cheetos have no sugar, but they're not better for you either. Anyway, eat right, exercise, die anyway. Have balance in your life. Eat things you enjoy because you enjoy them, and understand that you're not perfect, and that's okay. Godspeed and good luck.